If you had a prosthetic arm, how do you tell the difference between left and right? Well, righty tighty, lefty loosey. What's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to break down how many ESO players play ESO. It's actually a relatively simple question, but to get to the answer, we had to do tons of polls, find out all these different per capita answers. What's the average play time? Where does the average player play? Is that on Xbox, PlayStation, PC, but not just PC? Are they logging in through Steam? Are they using the launcher? There was a lot to break down. Let's go over the math and the numbers. And here is the Steam charts. Now, this is the perfect jumping off point because these are actual numbers that we can look at and assess. Now, which numbers we choose to focus on here is key. A lot of people think that I might look at, playing 42 minutes ago, 24-hour peak, all-time peak. Unfortunately, all those numbers, worthless. Because at the end of the day, if I was recording this at, a very high playtime hour, within the last 43 minutes might be a very high number. The 24-hour peak could be different if I was playing near a holiday or a weekend. The all-time peak obviously will remain the same, but also the all-time peak's not going to help us in our quest to figure out, on average, how many daily ESO players there are. So the number that we are instead going to be focused on is the last 30 days, 10,858.8. I do also want to apologize to the person who's not considered a whole person. They do say to the person who had the whole left side of their body cut off that he's all right now. Next, we just look at how many people on the ESO player base play on Steam versus other platforms. Important to note, though, that this had 3.4K votes, and it shows that 29% of the ESO player base plays on Steam. This is important because we know exactly how many players are playing on Steam, so now we know how many players are playing on all the other platforms if we assume that per capita wise, the ESO player base plays equally amongst all the platforms. I will note that we are going to break down some confounding variables. We're going to break down some statistical problems with these numbers, but we might as well go through the whole calculation before we start poking holes in our own logic just for funsies. I will say, though, that it is probably fairly accurate because while there's definitely a difference in play trends between console players and PC players, at least we can use this to get some raw numbers. And so the mean number, so again, this is the average number for any given moment over the last 30 days is 37,465.17. Unfortunately, the guy that was 0.8, you're now 0.17. So sorry to be that guy here for you. Now, this is a great number because this is generally how many ESO players are logged in at any given moment with our current last 30 days numbers. But imagine now for an instant, you were trying to figure out how many unique players played ESO on a daily given day. Now that's where the numbers become a little more crazy, a little more fun to see if we can extrapolate for. So the next thing I did actually was some general research. How much time do gamers spend gaming each week? And then how is that broken down by different age demographics? Because I actually know what the ESO demographics are to some extent because I can see, based on my own YouTube analytics, what's the breakdown of Gen Z, Boomers, Millennials, Gen Z amongst my audience, and therefore how many hours are they playing each week. The problem is that you can see that we're really starting to pull data from so many different sources and so many different weird areas that there's really no perfect way to do this. Also noting, too, that people who generally play MMOs generally play them for a little bit longer than people who don't play MMOs. Like people who might be playing, a first-person shooter might be playing different lengths of gaming versus people who play, massively multiplayer online games. So these numbers are definitely not perfect, but what we're going to take is the number of 12 hours per week. Because a lot of people, even when I did my own poll of how many people play ESO every single day, a lot of the comments noted that they get on, do their Seals of Endeavors, do some other dailies, and then get off. So I think 12 hours on average for the ESO player per week is a fairly accurate number that we can roll with, and it matches up pretty well with the actual data that I was able to find online that goes with it. I do want to warn you, the numbers here start to get a little cattywampus, so just bear with me. So we know that on average, across all platforms, there's 37,465 players at any given hour. The unique gamer plays for about 1.72 hours per day, so about 1.75 hours or just under 2. So if every 2 hours we're getting a new unique gamer to meet that 37,465 average, how many unique gamers, do we have? And if you put in all those numbers, you'll be able to get to a number of 5,223,674. And we actually do end up with a whole number. So that person who was all right now is all that's left again. Some other fun statistical data we can actually get from Dexerto. Now, Dexerto gives us some interesting numbers. Now, this is the previous 30 days that they're talking about. So this would be through actually the month of December. And they say, thanks to activeplayer.io, that they're able to estimate in the last 30 days an average of 2.8 million players logged into the Elder Scrolls Online. This is higher than the average of last month, which was 2.8 million, but 2,000 less. Now, what's interesting, though, is they averaged the concurrent player count over the last month settled at 21,018 players. But I actually think that this number is incorrect because when you actually go to the numbers that they're going off of, they're only counting the platforms of PC and Mac OS, meaning that there's a very real chance that these numbers are correct for PC numbers if you were to combine the actual Steam launcher in addition to the PC launcher that ESO has, in addition to the actual other ones, such as if you were to play through Epic Games. But I don't think that this number itself is as accurate because it's not counting the console health of the game. And we just finished Smack Talk and MMO population, but another source that Dexerto sources is actually activeplayer.io. And you'll notice something right away, 39,325 users. That's very close, Jake, to what we had said earlier. It is. And then we have 2.9, almost 3 million active players over the last 30-day period. And I do want to give a important addendum here. Just a quick note, that includes everyone who's got multiple accounts. It includes bots, people who are playing on ESO Plus for the first time. It includes all those people, just because if I don't say that, there's going to be people commenting that in the comments below. And if we were to scroll down to the actual player charts, you can see the average players they estimated in the last 30 days to actually be even higher than we did, with the average unique daily players being 805,000 concurrent players. And then they give us a bit more of their numbers here. And if you were to actually take these numbers and compare them to Steam charts, you would notice that they're very, very close. For example, you see a 19% difference in the month of July. And if you were to go actually to the month of July, here you would see a 20% difference. So you could see their numbers also mimic Steam's numbers to get their actual total daily average players, which I think is just very helpful when it comes to understanding these numbers and seeing if they're actually reputable. Again, though, all of these are estimates. There's no real formal answer to this. Even me giving you these numbers are not necessarily formalized. But I do want to also talk about, what do I think is good with this data? What do I think is bad? And what are some variables that I'm just not going to be able to extrapolate for? The first thing is I think the numbers are good. I think that it's a good jumping off point to just get an idea as to how popular the Elder Scrolls Online is, because everyone just points to the Steam charts as if that's the only way that people play ESO. And as somebody who's never played ESO through Steam, I'm always like, well, this is really goofy. Why do people just point at these numbers and say, well, this is how many players there are? Because PC's, population is the highest, but I think that doesn't account for PCs also having a lot of people playing through the launcher, the Epic Games Store, and so on. I do want to also note that I actually think that this number is also flawed too. I think that PlayStation is actually underrepresented in this number, and if PlayStation was actually a few percentage points higher, which is what I actually suspect it would be, our numbers would directly correlate to activeplayer.io. So why do I think that PlayStation players are less likely to respond to a random poll on YouTube about ESO content? Well, the answer is actually relatively straightforward. The PlayStation is the most popular console in the world, and the world has a lot of spoken languages. So when I reached out to a lot of foreign content creators, there was actually a higher percentage tick of them having PlayStation communities versus Xbox and PC ones in relation to my community. So I think that when you start including other languages, like Spanish, German, and other, EU creators, Right now, ESO has seen a huge uptick in Japan. Even in my own demographics, I've seen a 2% increase in people watching me from the country of Brazil. So ESO is a very worldwide game. And when you're an English-speaking content creator, you're not going to capture the full wide-ranging market of that. So that is an important distinction that I wanted to note with this data. Some other confounding variables that we actually touched upon earlier that a lot of people are going to just be commenting because people like to bring it up, and I understand why, is that there's people who play with multiple accounts. Makes sense. There's people who have, RIT voucher accounts. There's people who use extra accounts for guild traders, all sorts of reasons. There's also a botting problem on console, which sees a higher uptick of people as well. So these are all contributing factors to these numbers. So it's just important to kind of note that these numbers are being inflated from different areas. And I don't think that they're necessarily perfect either, because again, these numbers are not coming from Bethesda, or ZOS, or Microsoft. They're coming from me, a random dude on the internet, and they're coming from activeplayer.io, which granted is a reputable source for information, but it is also just their best estimate based on how much they can see people playing on different consoles per capita. And you may remember that Ree picked some very interesting numbers at the beginning of the video. Ree said that the average gamer played for about 12 hours a week. If you were to actually change that to the lower end of the average, their number of 805,000 would actually be directly up against mine of 898,000. So if you're like, Jake, your number seemed very low at the beginning, I was actually being as cautious as possible with my numbers, trying to give people a little bit extra play time, knowing that that would actually drive down the daily average players, just because I think people look at this number and they're like, holy crap, that's a lot. So those are both ends of the spectrum between 500,000 players and almost 900,000 players. And activeplayer.io lands us with about 805 active players on a daily basis. And then on a monthly basis, we have our 2.9 million, almost 3 million players over the last 30 days. And so thank you guys for watching. And I guess as just a final disclaimer, I just want to point out that I don't do this type of work in my real life. I really just call people silly gooses and try to tell them to get their lives together in a very nice and polite way, and sometimes in a more strict and sturdient way if I have to be. So these numbers are definitely flawed, as we've talked about, but we're trying to find an average, similar to where if you're trying to find out how many jelly beans are in a jar, the odds of you hitting the nail on the head or even hitting the nail on the head remotely close is a little bit difficult. But I do want to think that these are actually pretty good numbers, because they're pretty close to activeplayer.io's numbers. They line up with my data as far as, how many players I think there are based on how many average Steam users there are, then taking the Steam charts and going out and extrapolating this data outward. And even if you just want to look at my ESO numbers for the month of December, I had 248,000 unique viewers across all of my videos for the 28-day period, which is a crazy number. So thank you guys all for that. But it also just kind of paints this picture that there's a lot of people that play ESO. And I think that I just wanted to kind of do all the math and computation to see exactly how many. Whether or not people will agree or disagree with me in the comments, I guess, is the next discussion. And that'll be where I catch you. So thank you for watching. As always, leave a comment in the comments below to be entered into our giveaway drawing. Second thing is just make sure you subscribe/follow on Twitch and Twitter. And the third thing is look for a hidden word to be flashed upon the screen. If you're the first person to find and comment that word, you will win. This has been a very fun, interesting video. Very curious to see what the comments look like, because these numbers are quite big. So we'll see what everybody thinks in the comments below, and in the description below, I'll put all of the resources and links that we used. And if there's anything that you think that I did not calculate for, let me know, because next week we're going to be doing a bunch of live streams. So if we need to do any sort of arithmetic changes, or if you guys are more curious about any information about any sort of stuff like this, just let me know, and I'll catch you guys there. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.